Hello there, YouTubers, and welcome to another day with PE Slick Podcast slash Host Pass. I'm your host, Brandon Jamet, and joining me this week is Mr. David Andrew MacDonald. You best remember him probably as Edmund Winslow and Jordan Stark on Another World. And here he is today. Hey, David.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Other than the fact I'm trying to navigate my way through the technological 21st, I'm doing well. I thought, wow, I had this all perfectly nicely timed, and then I jumped onto my computer, and apparently I don't have the software I needed. So there you go.
Listen, it's
Well,
all good. I was going to tell you, if that didn't work out, maybe you could try your phone, because people
I'm on
do
my
it on
phone.
their phone sometimes. Uh,
They're both Apple devices. For some reason, my phone is willing to do something else.
Well, it's good to see you, man. You still look the same as always, man. I can
Well,
still see Edmund Winslow in you all the way.
well, that's very kind of you. It's nice to be an international man of demonic mystery. Yeah.
How are you and your family holding up during the pandemic?
We're fine. I mean, I mean, we're doing very well, actually. It's hard. I've been back and forth between here in New Jersey and also Minnesota, as you may have known.
Right.
We're in the process of moving out there, so
Mm-hmm.
it's a rural part of Minnesota, and it's interesting to sort of hear people. Some people up there are very conscious of what's going on, obviously, and other people are sort of in a world where it's not really real.
Right.
Maybe that's sort of politically influenced perspective, but also it's just their everyday life. It's just not really up there. I mean, it
Right.
is up. It's not in a rural context. It's just a different experience. And so they'll ask me about things. And I said, well, I mean, we're fine where we are, but I know our neighbors across the street have lost 3 or 4 church members. And, I have friends of mine in New York City, and I know a couple of people who have passed away, not personal friends, but parents of friends. And I know of people with certainly within the industry who have died. So it's a
Yeah.
very serious animal, and I have a tendency to keep my eye on science and not on what my brain thinks is real. So when people like Dr. Fauci or the WHO or CDC have something important to say, I have a tendency to listen to them. And in my experience, when scientists are wrong, they eventually step forward and go, "Okay, I was a jerk. I was wrong." And a lot of other people don't do that. So, I really have a tendency to lean into science and scientists at these times in the world in my life.
There you
But
go.
basically, we're doing well. Are you okay?
Yes, sir, I am. Ironically, during when it first happened, I was one of those essential workers. I'm a delivery driver, so I was still
Oh,
out there working in it. And my mother is a nurse. She's still working too. So yeah,
good.
we both we're okay. Yeah.
And everyone's healthy.
Yes.
Well, this is usually a phrase reserved for the military, but thank you and thank your mother for your service because it's extremely important.
Thank you. Um, you got some fans on here who's saying one fan who's been following my podcast. She said it's weird to see you talk American, and there's another one who says you got a nice British accent.
Well, that's often been the case. I think I do have a strange. My father was from Great Britain. My mother was from Massachusetts, and both of much, much older generations. My mother was born in 22. My father was
Mhm.
born in 24. So they had me very, very late in life. And no one do the math. And then anyway, but so I have a strange sort of hybrid of their accents. Plus, I'm actually from your neck of the woods, Matt. I'm from Washington D.C. originally. I've been accused of having a small twinge of
Oh,
Washington lockjaw. So when I
there
slip
you
into
go.
something, you would be down there too. When we slip into sort of when we kind of just want to affect a country accent, we go southern. So that's kind of in there too. And a lot of the southern accent is actually certain vowel sounds, certain consonant sounds, because I have
Hmm.
too much voice and speech, are closer to traditional southern dialects than they are to actually northern dialects. A lot of people wouldn't know that. The way we make our R's in the South is more traditional in the way they make them in Great Britain. So it's
Right.
funny, it's funny.
Yeah.
And forth. But some people think I'm an American. Other people think I'm British. I'm just, a kid from
You got that accent. I mean, for a long time since I saw you on Guiding Light, I've always admired that accent of yours, and even after when they got away from the St. Christopher stuff, and you
right.
remained in Springfield, you still had it, and I still hear you with it today. So you
Well, thank you.
you
There was we had when Paul Rausch left executive producer position at Guiding Light, and another one came out. I believe it was John Conboy. He came up to me and said, "Well, why don't you get rid of the British accent? Women don't find the British accent sexy." And I went, "Okay, well, I did that." Thank God my father's no longer alive. He wouldn't want to hear that. But anyway, so I asked if I could sort of phase it out over a period of a few months, and they said that's fine. So I started to do that. Came in the next day, starting to do that, and someone just came up to me. Different producer came up to me, just get rid of the accent. They want you to get rid of the accent. I was like, really? We're just going to throw away that aspect of the character, just sort of out the door?
right.
And I gave them 2 weeks of sort of this Keanu Reeves California thing, just to sort of make my point. What are you doing? I said, I don't know. I guess I'm a little upset. But it was
fun. So just to give you a little here's up about me. I got hooked on Guiding Light back in 2000 when I was in 3rd grade as a kid.
Wow.
Yeah. And my birthday is actually next week. I'll be 29.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't follow astrology, but what's your astrological sign? You're right after Gemini, or right two after Gemini?
I'm not good with that. I would have to ask somebody about that.
I'm sort of a Gemini, so I just always wondered what follows. I never knew.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, I was a kid, I watched kid stuff, played video games, did kid stuff, but it was something about soap operas that drew me, and that led to me being a writer. I've done some short films. I did one called Shaking Ground that was played at the film festival at my college. That was a soap opera. And and I did one called A Person's Nightmare. That's like my Lifetime movie. That's a soap opera. It was very hardcore. And I followed Guiding Light. I studied the show, and just like many others, including you guys as the actors, I was very disappointed on April Fool's Day. Guiding Light's canceled.
What?
After all these years.
When you what? Sorry, what? You were diagnosed with cancer?
I was saying, and just like many fans, I was disappointed when the news came out was canceled on April Fool's Day. Of all days.
Of course, yeah. Sorry, you broke up for a second. I thought you said, and I had cancer. I was like, what? What?
No way.
Okay, good. No, it was very upsetting, and I remember, every 10 years, especially the people who are on Guiding Light far longer than I would tell you that sort of every 10 years, the BBC would come over from England and do a television spot on the longest story ever told. Because it started on radio in January of 1938 or 38, I think, January of 38.
37, yep.
January of 37. Then it was indeed Meet the Press, which started in the summer of 36, because I think was the only broadcast longer. That was the only older broadcast, was Meet the Press. Indeed, Guiding Light was the longest fictional drama, was the longest drama in broadcast history, but there's only one show that was older, and that was Meet the Press. So I guess it was 36 and 37. I started 37.
My Jesus. Okay.
But yeah, so my mother, who never didn't watch much.
I lost you there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you there? You there?
Oh, okay. There you go. I see.
My mother, who never watched much television, but certainly soap operas were not her thing. When I started on Another World, she said, well, of course I'll watch. And I think it was difficult for her for a while. But then I remember I'd been on Guiding Light for about 6 months. So I'd been doing soaps for about a year at that point. And I was down visiting her, and she said, oh, what is Reva doing? I can't believe Reva's doing this. And I turned and I said, look at you, Mom. You got all sucked into it, didn't you? You're a soap junkie. She goes, it's awful. It's a little bit like I imagine heroin to be. It's all she goes, you get addicted to this thing. You can't not think about it. It's weird. I never thought I'd be addicted to this.
Right.
Okay, you do get sucked in. I was, the end of my senior year in high school, which was a number of years before you were born. And I broke my back at the end of my senior year in high school, and I was in the hospital. This was in Newport, Rhode Island. And first person I shared, I was there for 3 weeks in the room. The first person I shared a room with was a much older gentleman who was probably in his 90s at this point, who I think had a hip replacement or something. But he was a very nice fellow. But he had been a young, this is the late 1970s, had been a young boy in Newport, Rhode Island during the 1890s, when Newport, Rhode Island was like, it was the summer spot for the Astors and all of the richest people in the country. And so he said he remembers, he and his father was a sort of stable hand. And so he would be at these parties, taking the horses and the carriages that would come in for these parties. And he said he was a young boy and he thought it looked good in a uniform. And so he was running around doing that as like a young 12-year-old boy. Told me all these amazing stories. Just wonderful listening to him. And then like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock came and he said, "You'll have to excuse me now. If it's all right, I'd like to watch General Hospital." And I said, "That's fine. I don't know what it was." But of course I started watching. This is 1980, I guess, beginning of the summer 1980. I started watching General Hospital with him. And of course that was the summer of Luke and Laura.
Right.
And getting, all that intrigue and the wedding and everything else. And I got sucked in. I was like a black hole. I just got sucked into it. And I was just, by the end of the summer, I remember consciously trying to weed myself of needing to see it. Very strange. And I grew up with soap operas. It was not my thing, but it's the way the story's told. It's, and even people in the soap world would have a tendency to sort of, the industry certainly looks down on soap operas, and even many of my colleagues at the time did as well. Not in a nasty way, but sort of it's just soap opera. But the thing is that it's a very, very old storytelling technique, which is sort of a serial unweaving of simultaneous stories. Indeed, heavens forfend, Game of Thrones, it was a soap opera. Is several simultaneous stories unfolding as you go along. Charles Dickens wrote essentially in soap opera format. So these, and he was a okay writer. So there's certainly a history of these stories being very compelling to us, and the way the stories are told, even when we tell 240 hours of it a year, as we did on an hour-long soap opera. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's not good. So it's telling a lot of stories. So it's going to be hit and miss sometimes.
Right. I have a blast from the past for you.
Yeah.
I got a clip on my phone. This was actually my introduction to God and Light. This is you and Beth Chamberlain here.
Oh, I love. I ran into her.
This is y'all saying.
Sorry, I ran into.
I'm trying to get it on my phone. All right, wait a minute. Hold up. My phone is acting a little strange here. Yeah, this was my introduction to God and Light.
Oh yeah.
When she fell from the tower with that rope.
Oh, that's right. I think I had her held captive in the tower. I think I had Cassie held captive in the tower. Like you do. And
shame.
Oh, if you had a tower, you'd keep someone locked up in there as well. And anyway, so I remember that I had a lot of fun in that tower sequence. I wasn't sure if it was the sort of, we had a big water slide too at one point. There was a big water slide that I think Beth went flying down.
Yeah, I remember that. That was that flash. That flash flood storyline. I remember that, and then she came back as Lorelai.
Right. And then Philip Spaulding beat the holy hell out of him. That was fun. Like that. Yeah. That was a lot of fun. That stuff. That's when they could spend some good money on stuff.
I got a fan here who's been a fan of God and like she said she's been watching since she was a year old. What was it like working with both Beth and Laura Wright?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, it's I had a blast. Beth Chamberlain and I were sort of set up as vague love interests, and of course, Cassie and I were not at all, but we eventually became that. I enjoyed it very much. I mean, sort of at the time, there are always difficulties with different things, with how stories being told, what you're supposed to do in a story. It's always easier to tell a story when you're one of the characters in lead of a story because they're kind of writing for your journey. And when not, it's very hard sometimes to step in and every day you have a different, your character seems to have a different opinion because you just need to do something in order to tell someone else's story. And that's when it
Mm.
can get difficult. But I enjoyed working with them both very, very much. You know, I had a
I,
blast.
I gotta say though, because like I said, I was a fan of the show. I remember because for a long time it was either the Santos family or you and Richard Bradley Cole,
Right,
and
right.
then when he left and then came back as Jeffrey, and they paired Edmund with Cassie, I was like, now wait a minute, he kidnapped Cassie and tried to kill her, and she was married to her brother. Now they're a couple. I was a head scratcher for me a little bit, but y'all grew on me.
Yeah,
I
well,
thought that was cool.
that's, I mean, one of the fun things about playing bad guys, if you will, is bad guys have a tendency to be complex. You know what I mean? If someone is
Hmm.
just on the side twirling their mustache being evil, it's kind of silly. Um, but good guys, like for example, other than the wonderful words you get to say, I've never met a Romeo in Romeo and Juliet who didn't say, "Oh, that's a little boring." Um, you know, um, so it's playing bad guys is great because there's always conflict, and I would have people, write me and say it's really wonderful to see Edmund's very bad. I understand that, but now that I know his father never loved him and was hard on him and favored Richard and didn't favor him. I understand where his frustration and competitiveness and anger comes from. And so those playing those types of things going back and forth. When they just wrote Edmund as sort of this evil guy to make other people suffer, it was pretty silly. But when they allowed the character to have that or referenced back to that difficulty of his youth, regardless with all the money in the world and position, but still without the love of a parent, which I
Right,
think would be hard on anyone, regardless of how much money you have or position you have. To not have the love of the adults in your life is a horrible experience. Um, and so I think when that came into play, it's when the audience really went, "Oh wow, wow," and they'd go back and forth. And that's what playing a villain. So much fun about playing a villain. It's my Shakespeare references, but Shylock in Merchant of Venice, or you find out the end of Othello with Iago, and why aspects of why he's so angry and why he's
right,
it's those are interesting because you get a good representation of what I think humanity is all about, which is good people do bad people do good things. It's much, that great line in Hamilton, to see how the sausage gets made. I mean,
yeah.
it ain't just black and white, where it's all very confused, and there are good aspects and bad aspects, and good people do bad things, bad people do good things. And that's why it's fun to play a villain, because they're frequently complex.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you came a long way as Edmund because with soap operas, when you're a bad guy, they don't stick around long. And of course, you died a couple of times. You went off a cliff. You were shot. But you stuck around and then redeemed yourself. And I ended up liking Edmund. I liked your scenes with Tammy, Stephanie Gashard,
Oh
when they
yeah, she
aged
was
up.
great. She was great. I did a show at the old Globe in San Diego. Boy, 8 9 years ago, 2011, to the end of 2011, and
Mhm.
he was in San Diego at the time, and I saw her. I hadn't seen her about 6 years. That was really great. She was out there.
And And just when Edmund seemed, calm, they did the baby switcher storyline with Michelle. You had a lot of scenes
Oh
with
yeah,
Nancy saying,
when I delivered her
I
baby
was
beside
like, what?
when I drugged her car accident, I delivered the baby to the side of the road. That's when I just turned to someone next to me and said, when I read it in the script, I said, "Oh, they're writing me off this show. You don't drug a woman and deliver her baby to steal it and stay on a show."
Yeah, because that was the year I started taping the show, and I had all the episodes. Because you and Michelle would see each other, but y'all didn't have a lot of scenes together. And then when y'all
No,
finally, because she went on maternity leave, I believe, and when she came back, y'all had all these scenes together, and she was hiding it from Danny. Next thing I know, the car accident and the baby switching. I'm like, what is going on here?
yeah.
But Edmund, you but they wrote that so good for you.
Oh, good. Thanks. It was fun to play.
That it was
Else, I knew it was the sort of the end of my contract life on that show because you just again you don't survive that type of storyline. you know, that's a hard one to steal a baby after you drug the mother, and it's,
yeah. I was going to ask you about that. So I know during that period of time there was a lot of changes that got in light. A lot of people had left the show or was let go, and unfortunately, you was one of them who left who was let go. Were you ready to leave at that point, or would you? I mean, I know you came back, but were you ready to leave at that point? This was in
well,
2005.
yeah, I mean, ready to leave. It's it was a pleasant gig. That was a hard time in my life anyway. I mean, my wife and I had separated not 4 or 5 months before that, and so that was hard. But in terms of sort of going back and trying to find my stage career again, because I hadn't done stage in a long time, I think all things at that point in my life were mostly colored by the fact that my marriage had fallen apart. I didn't know what was going on. Was worried about my kids, and so I think that was really the driving factor. But no, I enjoyed doing soaps immensely. Yeah, it was fun. It's very nice, especially as an actor, to make a living wage. First of all,
Right.
not easy to. Um, and then to have my weekends free and a few days a week besides that, and I'd done a lot of stage before I started doing soaps, and I've come back to do stage again. So it's I don't know, if I was ready to leave, no, I had no set career aspirations at the time that I thought I was missing. So I was perfectly happy to keep on going now that I look back on it.
And it must have been something about your working chemistry with Bradley Cole because y'all worked together throughout the entire run when y'all joined. Because y'all was Richard and Edmund. He left and came back as Jeffrey O'Neill, grew a whole beard and all that. He dropped the accent. Both y'all had the accent, and then
Yeah, yeah,
even at the end when the show was ending, he was chasing you all over the place. Y'all, what was that dynamic like working with him all those years?
Sorry, you're breaking up, Matt. Sorry, Matt.
Oh, I was saying you and
Yeah, you're
Bradley
better now.
Cole, y'all had such a dynamic together. I mean, what was that like working with him all those years?
Oh, I enjoy. Bradley and I were actually quite close in the beginning when doing the Richard and Edmund thing, and then as storylines go on and people do different things, we weren't hanging out as much anymore. But I enjoyed working with Bradley very much. Um, a great guy. I mean, he had spent a good portion of his career in Europe, um, in France specifically. My wife and at the time and I went to actually I she was going over to visit my sister. I was told we were changing up executive producers. I forget what was happening, but I was told I couldn't take 2 weeks off. I wanted to get a 2 week vacation. I couldn't. So I told my wife I couldn't take time off. They wouldn't let me off the show, but they gave me a week off. I just didn't tell her about that. So I drove her to her parents, where she was going to catch a flight to Paris, and then I was just driving back home, or so I told her. And what I did is I drove to the airport in Pittsburgh, parked the car, and jumped on a plane and flew to Paris ahead of her. So when she showed up at my sister's apartment, my sister was living in Paris at the time with her two daughters, And when my wife at the time walked in to the apartment, I was sort of lounging on a sofa, and I said, "Bienvenue à Paris." She was like, "What are you doing here?" So I went to Paris and surprised her. What was I? What was the question? I've gone on a tangent and forgot
No,
what we were talking about.
hey,
I apologize.
hey, it's okay.
Oh, Bradley Cole. So
yeah.
while we were in Paris, Bradley had mentioned a bunch of places to go since he had spent all his time in Paris. We ran into some old friends of his, and one very good friend who showed us around Paris for a couple of days. Great guy. I forget his name. He was really, really wonderful, and just had a wonderful time. In part because of Bradley Cole.
Yeah, y'all. That was just a dynamic, you and him, and like I said, even toward the end, he was chasing you all over the place, and it was like, when the show ended, it just ended with him just chasing Edmund all over the place, and it was like, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, it was interesting too. I remember I forget who delivered the line to me. Character did, but talked about me being bad and said they didn't even know how many times I tried to kill my brother. And I paused and I went, no, he actually never tried to kill Richard. And what's interesting is that given that sort of struggle and what was interesting about that relationship is that even though he was always trying to beat his brother to win to sort of succeed over his brother, if there was one person in the world he would never ever kill, it would have been his brother, because he needed his brother to know, at the very least, he needed his brother to know that Edmund, had won. Outside of the fact that he loved his brother. So, but it was difficult. So when they wrote that, I forget if they had written it by the time, and I went and I said, no. I mean, I'll play it, but just let you know that's actually not the character. Because he needs his brother. He needs his brother's approval. His brother is his father in a way. I mean, you can write that off and think it's silly, but then you're undermining your own writing. So why do that? But yeah. So I thought this sort of Richard. I think for Bradley, Richard was a bit of a dull character, but to play Edmund with someone like Richard. And certainly the way Bradley Cole brought the sort of elegance and majesty I thought he did to that role, even though it may have been Richard may have been a little for Bradley as an actor on the boring side, maybe, I don't know. But for me as an actor, having that dynamic of another character to work with was wonderful.
Right. Talk about also you also work with another talented star. Y'all knuckled a little bit. Tom Profitt, who was Jonathan Randall.
Oh, Tom, yeah. Tom and I were always at odds. Not Tom and I, but the character and I were always at odds. There was a great line where I was, again, sort of a threat. And me threatening him about something. It was one of those sort of classic soap empty threats. Yeah, if you do that again, you'll see. Or yeah, you won't survive this one. Or one of these sort of empty threats. And I finally just looked at, we're on guys. Can I say something actually threatening here? Because this isn't threatening. This is all vague. Well, what did you have in mind? I said, well, let's just roll the tape and see if you like it. And so I'd beaten him up horribly and threw him against the wall. And I sort of got in his face and grabbed him by the throat. And I said, if you do that again, I'll hack off your feet and stand you in rock salt. Cut. Jesus. And then they kept it. I was like, they kept it. I was like, I can't believe you kept this. This is great. So I thought, that's a good one. I like that. That's a good, clear threat. Really nasty, but good.
Yeah, and that's really cool when when you acting and you can take chances like that, because one of the things I've learned from talking with people from Guiding Light is, I guess it is a challenge memorizing so much dialogue, and I would wonder sometimes back then, did y'all improv, because it's just so much material to memorize. So moments like that when you can add in like that, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly, all of us at different points mess up our lines and make up something else because we don't want to lose the shot. But I think most people, not all, but most people were always trying to do it as faithfully as possible. So much so, at least, that when it came to an instance like that, I said, can I just say something else here? I mean, I asked permission because the writers, actors are working hard, camera people are working hard, producers are working hard, directors are working hard, and the writers are working hard too. And so at the very least we can do is try to do what they, what they wrote down. Because a lot of
Right.
times, I mean, I just as we're all acting at the speed of light, they're writing at the speed of light. And again, it's going to be hit and miss. But some of those writers are just incredible. David Kreitzman lives out near where I am here in New Jersey. Lucky Gold. There's some wonderful writers on that show. Melissa Sammons, I remember she was the one who recommended Guiding Light take me when she left Another World and came to Guiding Light. So, and there are a lot of very, very talented people. And, to sort of just take what they do for granted and sort of pretend it doesn't matter, because there are a couple of storylines I was involved in. Two of them I can think of, both with one with, I think, with Cassie and Richard, and the other one with Cassie and Jeffrey, I think. Other people involved too. And I remember for those like 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we were getting those scripts. I remember eagerly looking forward to get the script. It was like looking through Eugene O'Neill. It was just like, wow, this is great. I mean, they had really crafted a great story. Whether we pulled it off or not, in front of the cameras, I don't know, but on the page, it came up like magic. It was gorgeous. So,
Right.
they did, I thought, some wonderful, wonderful stuff there too. But yeah, a lot of it has to do with how and a lot of the stuff with Pelfrey was a lot of fun, because he's I mean, I don't know what he's doing these days, but he was a sort of adventurous, wacky guy, and he'd kind of go for stuff, which was fun. He wasn't
He's
trying
still
to play it safe. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was saying he's still acting today. A couple of people have mentioned he's on some. Somebody might write it on here. He's on some new show, and he's apparently done took it a whole nother direction. Kind of like when he was Jonathan, but he's still acting today, from what I understand.
Oh, good. Good.
Let's take it back a little bit. I guess I'm sorry I didn't do this earlier. Where are you from, and what kind of influence did you have growing up? What kind of hobbies did you have growing up?
Oh, well, I'm from Washington, D.C. originally.
Right.
So my father was in Great Britain. My mother was from Massachusetts. They met during the war in New York City. He was a pilot in the Royal Air Force. And she was, my mother at the time was building the atomic bomb. And not as a physicist, but as a drafting person in New York. And, but they were married after the war. She was working in Paris. They were married in England, just outside of London, and then went to Paris. And then they decided, they said, well, what are we going to do? And my father had been working in a brewery before he went off to join the war at the age of 18. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I guess I would go back to Scotland and I can work in the brewery. My mother said, you will not be working in a brewery. We're going to go back to the United States and you'll go to college. Because he hadn't gone to college at that point. And I said, okay. And so we came back to the United States, went to college, went to law school. Although I don't think he wanted to be a lawyer. I think he really wanted to be an academic. But no money. There was no GI Bill of Rights in Great Britain, and there was no money. So he became a lawyer, and then my mother had a brother who was a lawyer and settled in Washington, D.C., and so they settled in Washington, D.C., and I'm trying to think. And then, so that's where I was brought up. So funnily enough, a lot of my influences would have to do with that. Of course, Washington, D.C. in the 1960s and 70s is very different from Washington, D.C. today. But it's those would be my influences. My parents both read very heavily. So that's always been an important thing for me. However, I can't say that I've always read heavily. I was diagnosed very young, very lucky, in the 60s, in the early 70s, late 60s, as dyslexic. Almost no one was diagnosed as dyslexic back then. So I probably would never have been able to finish high school had I not been diagnosed that young. So reading at that younger age was challenging for me. Not as much anymore, but so that wasn't as much of an influence. I think one of the big influences in my life is coming from a family with a pretty heavy academic background, when academics were more of a challenge for me. I did pretty well. I went to good schools. I did well, but it was not something that was necessarily always a joy. And I think it was a joy for a lot of them. So I felt like a little bit of an outsider in the context of my own family with regards to that. And funnily enough, the only thing I was particularly good at up front was mathematics, which is not common for a dyslexic person, but was mathematics. And so, because it was reading was hard, understanding what I was reading was difficult. So funnily enough, I actually went into a profession that was almost exclusively about reading and language. It's all of it. And now I just love it. It's sort of finding.
Man, where was you at when I was struggling with math? Because math is not my shoe.
It's funny, man. There was a young woman I worked with, she's a young actress here, and she's based in New Jersey. And I've done a lot of shows over the years at the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey in Madison, New Jersey at Drew University. Did my first show with them in 1992. And anyway, I met her doing Shakespeare in Love. She was a non-equity member, and she was going into her senior year of college. And she was a mathematics major. And I said, "Oh, really? Do you want to pursue math?" She goes, "I'll always pursue math, but I want to go into theater because I love theater." I said, "Oh, are you doing theater in college?" She goes, "No, I'm not doing theater in college. Theater in college is like doing theater in high school. It's a little cliquey nightmare. I can't stand it." I said, "Okay. So what kind of mathematics do you study?" She said, "Well," sorry, she said, "it's hard to explain. I'm at such an advanced level of mathematics that we kind of go into class and make up our own mathematics." I was like, "Okay." Wow. I stopped at calculus. I was like, she goes, "Yeah, I don't know how I put it. I think I'm sort of level 6 or 7 calculus. It doesn't really exist, but that's where kind of where I am." So here's this. She's great. She's a very good actor. And I was just sort of my jaws on my chin, kind of going, "Wow." But she, again, I did not have that kind of aptitude in mathematics. But the fact that she had an aptitude for math, but really loved theater, and that's what she wanted to do. And I said, "Wherefore the interest in mathematics?" She goes, "Oh, that's easy. When I was in, I think she said when I was in 6th grade, I was struggling a little bit with math. And I had a teacher who came in and explained everything to me. And all of a sudden, like a door opening, I went, oh. I said, "So it wasn't a natural aptitude?" She goes, "No, I think I have a natural aptitude, but it wasn't until someone really explained some basic ideas for algebra that I was able to put all the pieces together." She goes, "Now I do it in my sleep." I was like, and so I wish all of us had this. You know what I mean? Because it's the magic of a teacher that can really get that kid. Sometimes it's just the teacher who, basically is able to say often enough throughout the years, "No, you're good enough. You matter. You do." Whatever the struggles the kid may be having at home or with their siblings or with friends, because we're all predisposed on some level to think we're not good enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
It almost goes back to our earlier primate self. We have to imagine that things are bad, because if we don't, that saber-toothed tiger around the corner is going to eat us. You know what I mean? So we have to worry that things are bad. So we obsess when things are bad. One of the things we worry about, I think all of us do, except for maybe a psychopath, we worry about is that, are we good enough? You know what I mean? So sometimes it's just that one teacher steps forward and say, "You're good enough, you're good enough, you're great." That really, I think, is a beautiful thing. And I had a number of teachers like that, which was so helpful when I was struggling in school. And I really, my heart goes out to those kids that don't have that experience.
Right.
Sorry, I can really go off on certain topics. I apologize. Education is one of them for me. It was hard.
Yeah. Same here. I had my struggles in my school years. Like I said, math was not something for me. And, I got a buddy of mine who I've known since middle school. he's a math whiz. He knows all that stuff about calculus and all this. He showed me his book from when he went to some a school called ITT Tech, and I saw all this math stuff. I'm like, bro, I don't know half this stuff. You gotta tell me the
Right.
square root of AB plus or multiply. I'm like, I don't know half of this stuff. No.
It's so difficult. And then, when someone breaks it down for you, you go, oh, because our big worry is that, I don't get it because I'm stupid. Even if we're thinking that,
Right.
I'm thinking unconsciously of that because I'm stupid. I don't know that because I'm not good enough. And then, like a lot of things they show with people is that, having brains is great. Some people have amazing brains. Stephen Hawking has an amazing brain. Neil deGrasse Tyson has an amazing brain. Carl Sagan had an amazing brain. There are people who have amazing brains. Great, let them have amazing brains. But there are many people out there who have amazing brains that don't have stick-to-itiveness. They don't have what's referred to actually as, I think, grit. They don't have the willingness to try and fail and try and fail. And they know through all these studies now that the people who have grit will always succeed over those people who have brains but don't have grit. Does that make sense? Right. It's amazing. Yes. So when you talk to a kid, it's like, it's hard. We all know it's hard. Stick to it. You can do it. You can do it. And it's a hard thing to learn because we all just kind of, on some level, want to roll up and hide. It's hard not to do that.
After
not
hearing you just
that. What?
Yeah. I was saying, hearing you talking just now, I could envision you being. Have you ever thought of being a teacher? You could be a professor.
Well, that's very kind of you. One of the things I'm moving out to Minnesota, I keep thinking, is University of Minnesota is really just a phenomenal. It's a gigantic institution, but a phenomenal institution. And they do have I was thinking, I don't have a master's in theater. I went Juilliard at the time did not do a master's program. So I did 4 years of undergraduate school. I did it in 7 semesters, but it took me 6.5 years of undergraduate school. Kept on taking time off. And then I Juilliard for 4 years. And I didn't do a bachelor's program there, but they didn't have a master's. So I just did their certificate of completion. But, I know a thing or two about theater. So I keep on thinking, wow, maybe, as I'm on the dim and mysterious side of 40, I mean, let's face it, really dim and mysterious side of 40. In other words, pushing 60. That the whole idea of going, maybe it's time to go off and get a PhD. I bet I could get it. And then I looked at the program. They say you have to be able to read a foreign language. I'm like, oh man, I can sort of get by in French, but really,
right.
I get great dirty Latin translations, but I don't have a second language. So I don't know. I mean, but yeah, I'd like to do that. I mean, I was thinking too, if I'm going to move to Minnesota, try to find a position teaching theater. I'd love to teach theater. Because theater is, it's, for me, theater is not, it's not just about acting or plays or, performing skits. It really is, as I've joked to people, if I may, I'll use very good language, but I may imply something slightly raunchy. Theater may not be the world's oldest profession. We all know what the world's oldest profession is, but the world's oldest profession is a type of theater. So we know what the world's oldest profession is, right? That's prostitution. Prostitution is the world's oldest profession. That's the line, is the joke. So
hold on.
You there?
Oh boy, wait a minute.
Did it break up? You're frozen. Uh-oh. Your picture went away, Matt.
Sorry about that. I have internet connections
coming back.
Just sometimes. I'm sorry about that one.
I sort of hear. That's okay. It was so funny. So I don't know what you heard, but I'll start again. I joke that, when people worry too about, will theater ever come back? Because going into a big room with a whole group of people being all close together, which is one of the beautiful things about going to theater, which is one of the beautiful things about going to a church or a synagogue or a mosque. that experience of a community coming together to watch, whether it's a priest, a rabbi, an imam, whatever happens to be, but lead that congregation through a story, which is the same thing theater does. So you're part of you're the communities coming together, and you're leading the community through a story. So my joke is that theater may not be the world's oldest profession. The world's oldest profession is prostitution. That's the joke. But prostitution, the world's oldest profession, certainly is an aspect of theater. So theater is never going away. And it was so funny. You cut out entirely as soon as I said that. I thought, oh, I'm being censored. But there is, I forget what the question was you were talking about just beforehand that I was using that as an answer to. Yes, that's what happens when you get to be on the dim and mysterious side of 40. You forget what you're talking about. Hey, hi, my name's David. How are you?
No, you know what? I'm going to say this.
Yeah. Oh, that's what
you are. Young, just dye in your hair because you're doing the play. Wash that dye out because you know you're still in your 30s.
With this is my haircut. I put some blonde in a while ago because my wife and I were going to do a shoot.
You heard me, right?
No, it's something about dyeing my hair. Matt, you froze. Matt,
no, I was saying that you were talking earlier about older, and I was saying no, we know you still young. We know you're still young, so just dye that hair out because we know you're still in your 30s. You know.
Yes. I have a child who's in her late 30s, so that would be pretty complicated. Actually, yeah, she's.
You can still.
What? You're frozen again. I think we may have bad internet here. I'm sorry.
You still do 50 push-ups. That's what you were saying.
Actually, yeah. What I'm doing, I did Rocky on Broadway back in 2014, and I started doing this routine where I would do push-ups between. I'd go downstairs to start the second act, and I think began with the stair running sequence. I was not playing Rocky, but I would do push-ups before.
Oh, okay. I guess we're having some. Can you hear me?
We frozen out again.
Okay.
You frozen out again. Oh no! I lost you, Matt.
You know, Dave, I think this is an Edmund thing. I think Edmund has done something to this internet connection here because, golly, man.
It is. It's awful. Actually, the house, since we're in the process of moving, is completely torn to pieces. But I'm going to move and see if I get closer to the internet. And then maybe that would work. My daughter, it may be kind of dark here. But there we are. Okay. So I'm sitting on the stairs now.
Okay. I guess you didn't get the joke. I was saying this must be a Edmund thing with this internet thing going on right now.
It could be. Well, yeah, it probably is. I mean, I probably did the whole thing. Yeah. So anyway, but that's something I was thinking about doing out in Minnesota, was starting to teach. That's what the long story about that kind of stuff is not just teach, acting and theater history and things like that, but what it is about the sort of nature of theater itself draws people into it, like that mathematics friend of mine. My wife, who's just been in love with theater since she was very, very young. I have a 38-year-old daughter that I just met 10 years ago while I was doing Mamma Mia on Broadway, and she found theater on her own as a child. She lives out west in Colorado, but she's a teacher. She teaches science and mathematics, I think, high school. but she her sort of hobby has always been theater. So it's almost like a genetic thing, where that idea of sort of sharing stories with an audience. It's a very seductive experience. Certainly on stage, if you have a television show, there's a lot of money involved. But if you're doing theater, there's really not much money involved. But it's not any money involved. But it is a very seductive profession because there's something wonderful about that audience relationship. So I'd love to teach it.
Right.
So thank you. Think I do be a teacher. I appreciate that.
I think you. I think that will work out because you've done. Thank you. Yeah, you would. I can see that.
Thank you.
So I got some fans here. She wants to know: are you still in touch with Bradley?
Go ahead. So what do they want to know? Sorry, Matt, you there? Oh.
Okay.
I'm right here. Darn. I can't get the internet.
Hold on. Wait a minute.
Hi, you there, Matt?
Wait a minute. This. All right, guys.
Hey, Matt, there you are. So I've come downstairs. I'm standing right next to the internet, the Wi-Fi now, whatever it's called, the router. Here we are. See if that'll be better.
Yep, I can see you. Okay.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me?
So what were you saying? I'm sorry. You said
can you hear me?
There was yeah, I can hear you. You said there was someone there who had something to say.
Okay. Oh. Yeah.
I can see you, Matt, but you're frozen. I can't
Are
hear
you still in touch with Bradley Cole?
No, I haven't spoken to Bradley. His wife and I think either I reached out or his wife reached out to me.
Boy. Hold on. Let me see if I can do it on my phone. Hold on.
Okay, man.
Hold on. Let me see if I can do it on my phone because this computer is just ridiculous. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can see you. Yeah.
Okay. I was getting ready to switch on my phone. Are you still in touch with Bradley Cole, who was Richard?
No, I'm not. His wife, either his wife or I reached out, sort of be friends with the other on Facebook a couple of years ago. So I occasionally see posts about his life, but no, he and I are not in touch. Not that I'd be averse to it. We just didn't stay in touch, unfortunately. I think I'm not sure where he is. Perhaps he's out west. I mean, he was a LA, Las Vegas guy, so maybe he's gone out there. I don't know.
Right. When I first started doing this, some fans suggested about reaching out to him through his wife, Yurko, who has a Facebook.
Yeah.
So I did reach out to her to interview him about God, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if he could do an interview. He's a very nice fellow. He's very smart.
To know, did you have any? Yeah. One fan wanted to know, did you have, and then they brought him back as Jeffrey. Did you have any reaction to that?
Did I have any reaction to Jeffrey what?
I'm sorry. So one fan wanted to know, did you have any reaction when they decided to kill off Richard when he left originally, and then they brought him back a year later as Jeffrey?
Yeah, no. My reaction was that I sort of assumed that eventually it would be revealed that Jeffrey was either Richard's long lost identical twin brother stolen at birth by an international spy ring, out of France or something, like happens. And then, but then I thought maybe it would be revealed that he was actually Jeffrey and had been a sort of an international man of mystery the whole time, that he was actually Richard. I never knew that it would be an entirely new character that just happened to be identical to Richard. I assumed they'd make some connection, but they didn't. But I'm sure he's the only one could answer why that would be the case.
There you go. Okay.
I can only say.
You also, so I didn't ask this. So when did you know that you wanted to be an actor? I mean, when in terms of when you was growing up.
Well, way back in the day, when I was leaving high school, I applied to have been accepted to this 5-year program at the University of Rochester in New York, Eastman School of Music. So it would have been 3 years at the University of Rochester getting a BA in music, and then 2 years at the Eastman School of Music getting a master's in voice, because I thought I was going to go into opera. And I was unsure if that's what I was going to do, but I thought that's maybe what I was going to do. And then I was accepted to my first choice school, which was in Colorado. And I didn't think I was going to get in there, but I got in, and they had a very small school, but they had the world's sort of foremost expert on medieval music at the time. You there, Matt? You frozen? You there? Matt? Matt, you're frozen. Matt. I don't know if you can hear me, Matt. You're totally frozen and you're looking to your right. Looks as if I may be reloading.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hear me better now?
There you are. And now you're on the other side. Okay. I can hear you. So, this 5-year program at the Eastman School of Music, University of Rochester School of Music. And then I got into my first choice school, which was out in a small school in Colorado. And they had one of the world's experts on medieval music out there. And I'd always loved early medieval music. And they had a small theater department. I went, okay, well, one wouldn't go out there for voice performance, but maybe I don't want that. And when I went out to college, I did a couple of plays my freshman year and just completely fell in love with it. With performing, but also the first play I did was, I think, The Three Sisters, Chekhov's The Three Sisters, and then I did West Side Story, and I really had started reading a lot about theater and history of theater, and I became really fascinated by it at that point. So I kind of came at acting kind of from a back door, but I started off being just interested in this sort of history of theater itself. You there? Did I lose you again?
Talk about your character on Another World. You played kind of a far gone character there. His face was I don't know how to describe that one. Your character on Another World when you joined the show.
Well, that would be the distinction of playing the oldest, ugliest man in daytime. Jordan Stark, David Halliday. That was great. When that was the casting director. The casting director out there at the time was a casting at Another World at the time was a cast director named Jimmy Bohr. Jimmy Bohr and I crossed over at a couple of different theaters over the years. He would direct Shakespeare. Jersey Shakespeare was where I crossed over with him. And I'd never worked with him, but we'd always crossed over and knew each other. And so I got a call from my agents one day. You still there? Matt, you still there? I think I lost you. Hey, there you are.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So
yeah,
Jimmy Bohr was casting Another World, and I got a call from my agent saying, "Hey, give Jimmy Bohr at Another World a call. He'd like to talk to you about a contract role. He knows you're not going to audition for contract roles in soaps, but give him a call anyway." So I called him up, and I like Jimmy a lot, great guy. And he said to me, the greatest compliment I've ever received in my career. And that was, "David, I have to cast a 221-year-old facially deformed, time-traveling scientific genius, and I don't know anyone on either coast who can pull it off except you. You gotta come in and audition for this thing, please." And I went, "Jimmy, that is the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. I'd love to come in and audition for it." And
right.
So, I turned to my wife at the time and I said, "I maybe could play a contract role in a soap opera, and I think it's time to make the donuts." In other words, to try to make a little money, because I wasn't making much money. And so it did, and it ended up working out. It didn't for a while, and then it did work out, and I enjoyed that over there immensely. It was really sad to see that show go. And I got voted the only. That's when I was still in Another World. I didn't know anything about Guiding Light. I got voted the only story on Daytime dumber than Reva's cloning. That's pretty good.
Wow.
Pretty good. Yeah. The only storyline stupider than Reva's cloning. But I thought it was a great story. I liked it.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of it, but I've seen some of that. And then when I first saw you, you had glasses on, you look like a scientist, and then like you were saying, and then
David, the dark glass, that was with the old lumpy.
And then you came on with your face kind of out there. I'm like, okay, what happened to him? But that was some interesting stuff there. That was.
It was fun. Chris Goutman, who was producing at the time, said, he said, "Hey, this story is so far out there. I mean, you'll never have a chance to play something like this again." I said, "You're right. Good fun. I like it."
Yeah.
And people would say in Guiding Light, "Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real." I kept thinking, why keep it real? Let's keep it compelling. If it's totally fake, as long as it sort of makes people, feel and think things, that's good too. Keeping it real is great, but keeping it compelling is more interesting, I think.
Where do you think Edmund would be right now in 2020?
That's an interesting question. I think he would be, if he were living in America, I think he would be, who knows? Who knows where he was at the end? I mean, he was sort of traveling around, running away from Jeffrey. I don't know. So much for me is in the political spectrum, simply because that's how I grew up. I think he would be outraged by how sort of personally despicable the President of the United States is, how he lacks anything resembling being a gentleman. But at the same time, he knows what it's like to make it all about himself. So maybe he'd like him. I have no idea. I just don't know. It's hard. It's an interesting question. I have to think about that. Where would Edmund be? Because, Edmund went back and forth. He was a bad guy. He was a good guy. He was a bad guy. Maybe he's grown older and wiser and come to terms with the fact that just because his father didn't love him, doesn't mean he has to hate himself, which I think is what happens. When even unconsciously, we reflect our parents' opinions of ourselves. That can be hard for someone, whose father hated him or treated him like garbage. So who knows? Maybe he's grown older, even though, according to you, he's still in his 30s. Thank you so much.
Well, hey, you never know. You never know.
You never know.
Um, what kind of advice do you normally give people who want to get into acting?
I think I think anyone interested, anyone who's interested in my line is that if you're interested in getting into acting for fame and fortune, don't go into banking. You're much likely to make both, much more likely to make both money and fame. You know, I think the union statistic is that the equity actors union is 85 or higher, between 85 and 90, 80, 85% of professional actors, in other words, members of the actors union, professional actors make more than $1,000 a year off their chosen profession. That's, you can't live off $1,000 a year.
No.
So, and then also it's probably it's easier to make money. Well, in the day of social media, maybe it's a different animal now, but it's easier to make money than it is to make fame. So if you're going into the profession to be famous and rich, really find something else. Become a plumber. I mean, you can make good money plumbing. You can make better money banking. I mean, but if you really love the idea of acting and what it is on sort of a social context, what it is, as a friend of mine said, he goes, yeah, I could have gone in a bunch of other things, but I just like the idea of sharing stories with audiences and trying to change the world. For him, and he was graduated near the top of his class from Cornell University. He could have done pretty much whatever he wanted, but he just loved what he was doing. So, and he knew he would never be rich and famous, but that's okay. That's not what he was about. That's what Kim Kardashian is about. Let Kim Kardashian be about rich and famous. But then again, I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't know what her interests are necessarily about theater, nor is she necessarily an actor. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I think if someone is really interested in what it means to sort of get up and tell stories in front of people and are really moved by that, then that's a great thing to do. Just understand it's a hard life.
Right.
But if you're just doing it to be rich and famous, really do anything else. Anything else.
Right. I have 5 more questions for you, and I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
My first question is, what kind of music do you like?
Oh, good Lord. I listen to such a broad selection. Recently, as I've been working on this house, I'm going to have to go plug in. I'm at 20%, so I hope I don't lose you as I go upstairs to plug in my phone again. Let me know if the connection gets bad again. And
Okay.
I was working on my house, the house up in Minnesota. It's an old farmhouse, needs a lot of work. And I let's plug this in. There we go. And what I found has been on my sort of computer of my music library. I've been listening to a lot of Nina Simone and a lot of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, which a lot of people wouldn't think go together, and they don't. One sort of bluegrass, Emmylou Harris kind of stuff, and then Nina Simone is a goddess. So, but I've been listening to a lot of that. Funnily enough, I always lead with this because I don't want people to think, I don't like, here's quoting the Bible, I don't like bearing false witness. I don't like to represent myself as something I'm not in order to garner approval or fans. You know what I mean? I like to kind of lead with as much authenticity as I can. So I'm not a religious individual. I have no beliefs on that line. However, I love religious music. I love it. I love religious music. I like religious music from the 9th century. I like religious music from the 14th century. I like contemporary religious music. I just like I find myself listening to Christian radio stations. I go, I got to turn this off. But I like a lot of Nitty Gritty Dirt Band actually has, Johnny Cash had a lot of religious music. So there's something about lyrics and music about an idea of God or gods or however you want to, basically how we as human beings all around the world, every continent in the world, that we're always sort of wondering where we fit into a place in the eternal. Does that make sense? And when that's expressed in music or poetry, I think it's gorgeous. I just love it. So it's not as if, in terms of that, I listen to jazz, I listen to classical, I listen to rock and roll. Hell, I can put on heavy metal and have a good time. I just watched, along with the rest of the country, watched Hamilton again. I saw Hamilton on stage, and I watched it again and listened to all that incredible music that man put together, and the incredibly talented cast he has doing it. So it's, and I think actually the hip hop and pop music combo that Lin-Manuel Miranda put together was almost like Baroque opera, where you have the hip hop was the recit, the rap was the recitative, and the arias were all pop music. It was just, it's really incredible what that guy did, but those are pretty disparate things between, medieval religious music and hip hop and into jazz and then into like heavy metal rock and roll. If something catches my fancy, I'll go, oh, cool. I like that for a while. I started, my mother-in-law, who lives in Duluth, she had sent me this sort of pop song from Finland, because she's Finnish, her background is Finnish, called Levant Polka. And I guess that's a big thing over there. And then I get a poppy little tune in Finnish, which is a language, needless to say, I don't know. And, but it was, poppy back and forth and fun. And then I saw this heavy metal band, this Finnish heavy metal band, covering the same thing. So I started listening to those guys. And those guys are pretty good. And of course, that rabbit hole me on to this other whole movement in music, which is metal folk music. And there's like all these like metal folk bands in the Nordic countries, and some of their lyrics about going troll hunting. Talking about obscure aspects of music, troll heavy metal. So, if something tickles my fancy, I'll listen to it. I don't really kind of stick with one thing. And then, I will like not have listened to like classical music for a while. Then I'll hear it and I'll go, oh yeah. And then I'll listen to that for a few days and then I'll switch back. And I don't really have one set of music, except I'm always frequently going back to religious music. I don't know why. My line is, thus spake the atheist. I don't know why, but I love religious music.
It's a sign, it's a sign.
It's a sign. Yeah, it's a sign.
My second question to you is kind of going back to Guiding Light. I didn't ask this. What was it like working with Kim Zimmer? Y'all had some dynamic there, like.
Oh, I loved Kim. Kim and I sort of give a shout out to each other every now and then on Facebook. She was touring with Wicked for a while. And the last show I did was in New York City. Ironically enough, your viewers will get a kick out of this. I was playing the role of, actually playing the role of Lucifer.
Wow.
Stage adaptation of John Milton's Paradise Lost, which is great. It basically Paradise Lost with Lucifer just having fallen from heaven and in hell. That's where the play begins, waking up, the burning stage. Kind of amazing. A wonderful group of people. But the woman, Lou Liberatore, played another demon with me, a New York actor, magnificent actor. And Alison Fraser was also in the play. She was playing Sin. Sin is both Lucifer's daughter and wife. Don't go there. Pretty complicated stuff. Anyway, but Allison and Kim were kind of alternating the same role on the tour, back and forth. When Kim wasn't doing it, Allison was doing it. When Allison wasn't doing it, Kim was doing it. So, and I read about that somewhere. I thought, oh, that's great. I know both of them because I worked with Allison years ago. So I was sort of hoping, because I was touring something. No, I wasn't touring anything at the time. But I was hoping if I was out regionally that the Wicked tour would come around and I could see it and see either Allison or Kim doing it. But I was never able to do that. But I miss Kim. She's great. We were very lucky to have for lack of a better word, diva like Kim, because she was one of those people that looked out for the small guy. You know, someone be giving an extra a hard time on set, and she'd step right in and defend the extra. You know, there's no benefit for her there. And as you know, as I think Grant Alexander was the one who used to say this, and I agreed with wholly. It's something I live by, which is you can tell a lot by a person's character by how they treat someone who can do absolutely nothing for them. And Kim was always making sure that the little guy was taken care of, someone who could do absolutely nothing for them. So I've always loved Kim very much.
I just had Grant on the other day. You know, he's doing well.
Did?
Yeah, he's doing.
Good.
Yeah, I liked y'all work. I mean, I know, of course, Reva and Edmund didn't get along, but you know, y'all dynamic. You know, there was an episode where she pulled a gun on you at one point,
I remember that.
Toward the end of the show, y'all was like, Russ, you was trying to take her baby, and she stuck you in the neck with a syringe and all that.
Oh God, the neck syringe thing. I think I remember that. Yeah.
That was kind of toward the end when they started doing the different camera setup on the show. The whole.
Yeah, there was a time they were doing a lot of, especially San Cristobal stuff. They would, you know, usually a 3-camera format, but they were using a lot of 4th camera boom arms and doing some different stuff to try to give it a new look, I think.
Yeah, you work with a lot of good leading ladies on that show. Especially I don't know if you remember this. When they brought Alexandra back, you worked with Joan Collins.
I do remember that. She was supposed to be on the show for 6 months. They set us up as a love interest, yes, and then she left, but she was very nice. I remember, we had several chats. She was very, very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, she had a book party that actually Grant was at too, and it was just happened to be caught in a driving New York rainstorm, and I showed up at this book party just soaking wet. It was awful. Grant was looking at me, "What are you doing?" I was like, I got caught in the rain. Never mind.
Yeah, and Marge Doucet too, because she came back as Alexandra. We just lost her a few months ago.
Marge was great. Marge was fantastic. She was good Kansas stock. She was Kansas originally. She was great.
Yeah. My third question, one fan wanted to know, what was the first soap opera you appeared on?
Wow, I think the first one was Loving with Laura Wright. At the time, she was Laura Sisk, but I think it was Loving. ABC.
Yeah, I believe on your bio it said you played a father on that show. You was a father. Yeah.
They weren't sure what the father Matcher was going to do. It was a priest, but he was a young priest who found women attractive. Oh, okay. So, I said, well, what do you mean by that? So I kept on going, you want me to go, bless people and then check them out? But what do you want me to do? But we did that actually I married Laura and Paul Anthony Stewart on that show. I remember that. And Paul was great because, I still really had no idea what I was doing. And he would just sort of calmly help me, with all the sort of stuff, off camera. It's like, okay, put the book down now. Okay, now turn to us. It's like, I didn't know what I was doing. It was great.
And it's ironic, I worked together again years later on Guiding Light. You, Laura, and then Paul as Danny's. Yeah.
And Lisa Peluso was at Loving at the too, and she was on Another World when I was there.
Yeah, you also worked with Paul's mother on the show, Carmen, Sandra. They paired y'all up together. Sandra, she played Carmen Santos on the show.
Oh, Sandra, yeah, Sandra and I. We see. Yeah, I love Sandra. She's great. I still, we say like with Kim, I kind of shout out occasionally on Facebook to one another. I mean, not on Facebook that much, but we still shout each other occasionally. She was great.
My fourth question to you is, because you've had, again, I'm not calling you old because you are a young cat, but you've had quite a long body of work above you. I mean, how would you sum up your career?
How would I sum up my career? I'm sorry, I plugged in a phone that was not plugged into the wall. I'm really clever. I mean, wow. Let me just see if I can plug this thing in. Hold on. There we go. How do I sum up my career? For how I have been remarkably lucky for how criminally unambitious I am. I really have never pursued my own fame and celebrity, and I don't think that's a good thing. People may think, "Oh, that's a good thing," but no. In all, even if you're a scientist, you need to somehow pursue things with an eye on your own success, and I never did, which is something I wish I had a little more of. There's a happy balance between being, if being serious about what you're doing and also trying to become known for what you're doing. You know what I mean? There's a nice mix. I have always been fascinated by theater, and I've been really kind of ill-equipped to put myself forward in order to sort of be famous. Does that make sense? It's hard to explain. Yeah. So I think that would be my summing up career. I think I've been remarkably lucky for how criminally unambitious I've been.
There's a fan
who,
who,
as I'm, pushing through, looking not to slow things down, but we're definitely, Minneapolis, St. Paul is a fantastic secondary market. Really great theaters out there doing a lot of really good stuff. And there's the Guthrie, of course, which is one of the country's leading, if not the country's leading regional theaters. So, my wife and I, who's also an actor, we're going to go out and try to do our own thing and become part of the Twin Cities theater scene.
There's a fan who wanted to give a shout out to you. Her name is Miss Neeler. Miss Jack. I'm sorry for mispronouncing her first name. Miss Jack Q.S. Neeler. She was a huge fan of you when we was on God and Light. She wanted me to give you a shout out. But give her a shout out.
Hi, what's her name again?
Miss Neeler.
What's her name? Jacqueline Neeler.
Jack Carver. I can't pronounce her first name, but her last name is Neeler. She wanted me to give her a shout out to you. Yeah.
Hello, Ms. Neeler. Thank you so much.
What are your current plans? I mean, anything you're working on, even with what's going on in the world and everything?
Well, I mean, I finished a show back in March 1st. And I was going to go straight out to Minnesota from there. But then when the pandemic started settling in, I didn't want to leave my wife and kids here alone. So I stayed here, went out May 1st and started doing some work. Just came back about a week ago. And I'm going to head out again to continue to work because they're going to be moving out in August. And I'll come back to grab them too and then go back again. Bought a big old used crazy truck on the old farm because it's a old 8-acre farm, 9-acre farm, something like that. Collapsing barns and everything. But my wife and I hope we can sort of create one of the outbuilding spaces to do sort of develop theater pieces and get friends out when things settle up a bit. Maybe look for a teaching position out there. Try to get jobs at local theaters. That's the plan for the future. She and I were going to do a play at Shakespeare Theater, New Jersey, together this May and June, but it was start rehearsals the end of April and then close the beginning of June. But the pandemic stopped all that. They postponed it to next February. But now since their entire season, most theaters have completely closed down now, and they're included. They're probably just going to put it up again next April and May and June. Unfortunately, since we'll all be out in Minnesota at that time, my wife will come back and do the show alone, and I probably won't be doing it.
Right. I have to apologize. Mr. Neeler was a guy, Mr. Neeler. I'm terribly sorry about that. I had no idea. He wanted.
I apologize.
Me too. I have no idea. I'm sorry about that. But
that's quite all right. Jack Neeler, Jackson Neeler. Hello, Mr. Neeler. Sorry about that. We've got a bad connection too.
But I definitely want to thank you for appearing on my podcast. I'm sorry for the bad connection that we both experienced here, but like I said, I was a deep fan of Guiding Light for many years. I was disappointed when it was canceled, and I've had a lot of people from the show. Tina Sloan, I've interviewed twice. Liz Kiefer, Ron Reigns, a few others from the early
Oh, she's
years.
great.
It's been a blast, and
Liz Kiefer.
I'm also working on doing a documentary about the show.
Back to the. Say it again, man. What'd you say?
I'm sorry. Because I'm such a fan of the show, I'm kind of working.
The last thing you said. What'd you say again?
Because I'm a fan of the show, I'm working on a documentary about the show.
Oh, fantastic! What? I hope that goes really well. I look forward to seeing it when you get it done.
Thank you. I'm gonna have a trailer out really soon about it, but because I was a fan of the show and I've had many people on, and I studied everything about it from beginning to end. I'm going to do I was 50-50 about it because of what's going on in the world today, but Tina Sloan kind of encouraged me to pursue it and see, it's a good story to tell. And talking with you guys has always been is a blast.
Oh yeah. Oh, Tina's right on the money. I mean, you should always be following what you think is the thing you want to do. As Joseph Campbell said, it's follow your bliss. Hey, great. I don't want to go into banking, but I'm going to go into banking to make money and raise a family. If you love banking, fantastic. But if that's not your thing, you got to follow what turns you on, because you got at the end of the day, the only person you have to go to bed with is you. So you want to make sure that you're happy with yourself. You know what I mean? So yeah, Tina's right on the money. You should pursue that thing and then give us all the great pleasure of seeing it. I'd love to see it. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast. A lot of fun, man. Really
no problem. Hopefully, maybe down the road, I can have you come back when you have some time, and hopefully, we both have better internet connection. And
yeah, well, in Minnesota, unfortunately, we have satellite connection, so it's awful. But there you go.
Yeah, it's cool. Any last minute comments about Guiding Light at all to the fans or in general about the show?
No, it was really sad that the oldest drama in broadcast history was taken off the air. But, with the advent of, people kept on saying the judge shows and the reality TV, but it's really the advent of the computer age, the electronic age. Now anyone with an iPhone can kind of make their own television show. So it became so expensive. It became so expensive to produce all that stuff. A daytime television show is inevitable. It's going to go away. But the one thing that's not going to go away is that type of storytelling, because it's as old as the hills. So it's people should feel confident that although that old show went away, that there's a lot of great television has come along since then with all the cable and everything else. So no, it's just remember those things fondly and think of us with a certain amount of fondness, and we'll all be well.
There you go.
Hey, and if anyone's out there and they happen to be in their town doing a show, or I'd love them to sort of send a message backstage, because I'd love to come out and say hi. It's always nice to do that.
Absolutely, and I think you're going to be. You should really write a book, because you got a history. You could be a book writer and write a book about your history and acting and the event of being a teacher.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Matt. That encourages me tremendously. You're my Tina Sloan now.
Oh my. Oh man. Well, David, thank you for being a part of my podcast. It was a blast talking with you. I'll reach back out to you in maybe around late August or September. Maybe we can have you come back again and do some more talking about acting and about that as well. And
August might be tough September might be pretty good. September, October might be pretty good. Definitely.
Okay.
And if you're down at any point in Baltimore in the near future, just find the mechanic stage door for me and give it a kiss, or at least put your hand on it. And
I will. Well,
the mechanic's still there, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a yeah.
Yeah, just put your hand on the stage door and says, "David says hello." It's been years since I played there, but I love playing in Baltimore.
Okay. Well, that's where I'm at. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm in the Winslow Mill Woodlawn area of Baltimore. That's where I'm at.
Okay. So you're not that far then. Okay, great. Yeah. I'll wait for the vibes to come my way.
Thanks again, David. And you made my birthday a special a gift. Since it's next week, I've had a blast talking with you guys and having you come on board.
What day next week?
Yeah.
What day next week is it?
The 24th.
What day next week? The 24th. The 24th. Well, happy birthday in advance.
Thank you. You have a blessed day.
Thank you so much for having me on. You take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, guys, thank you for tuning in to PE Slick Podcast. I have to apologize for the bad internet connection on my computer, and now I'm on my phone doing this. I'm not big on doing interviews on my phone, but and I had a blast bringing David on and talking with many people from the show as well. I've been hush hush about the documentary because I'm working on it, but I'm going to see where that can go. And Mr. Nealer, Mr. Karari, we're terribly sorry for that mix up there, but please keep staying tuned to my podcast, and many more is going to come on. I'm going to have Beth Chamberlain come on the 27th in 2 weeks after my birthday, and I'm going to have her come on board to talk about God and Light and many others, and there's more to come. So stay tuned. Thank you guys, and until next time, you have a good night now. Bye-bye.